other cultures and pre-Columbian civilizations discovered the Americas prior to the arrival of Columbus in 1492. Whether we're talking about the ancient Polynesians sailing and navigating across the Pacific Ocean, founding their civilization on Rapa Nui or Easter Island, and then very clearly making contact with the pre-Columbian peoples of Peru, or whether we're talking about the Vikings sailing across the northern Atlantic and making contact in northeastern North America. Not to mention, we also find Aboriginal DNA in people of ancient South America. So very clearly and evidently, there were people before Columbus who had discovered the Americas and interacted with Native Americans. But the big blank spot here is, while the Vikings did cross the northern Atlantic, we don't really see evidence of crossing from the central Atlantic or the southern Atlantic. And this would be from civilizations such as out of the Mediterranean or out of Africa. And while there's no hard evidence of civilizations coming out of the Mediterranean or out of Africa anywhere in the Americas, such as actual cities themselves, or a great abundance found in the Native American world of resources and materials that would have come from the Mediterranean or Africa, and we almost certainly would see evidence if there was cross and continual contact, not just one-off examples of people coming from the Mediterranean or Africa into the Americas and never leaving or dying before returning home. Because in the Americas, we have things like corn and potatoes, very, very valuable crops that would have spread like wildfire throughout the Old World. However, I strongly believe that we do have evidence and we do see glimpses and potentially even cameos of people who come from straight across the Atlantic in both the ancient Caribbean and the ancient Mexican world. First, we go deep into the Olmec heartland of La Venta. Now, La Venta is one of the main, metropoli or capital cities of the Olmec world, although that may be an oversimplification of its importance. La Venta seems to have been inhabited somewhere between 1400 and 400 BC. Now, in the Olmec world, dates are very gray. Nothing is quite so black and white. But between 1400 and 400 BC was essentially the height, the middle chapter of Olmec civilization. And it's here that we see an absolute explosion of megalithic artifacts being produced and being brought in and transported through a means by which we really don't quite understand from the Sierra de la Tuxtla volcanic belt about 90 kilometers northwest of La Venta. There are so many strange things about these Olmec monuments as far as what exactly the heads depict, why the heads seem to be quite literal portraits of Olmec rulers, but we also see so many other depictions of these half were-jaguar beings. Perhaps they are shamans or a ruling shamanic class of some kind. But the strangest monument, potentially the strangest monument that comes out of the Olmec world, in my opinion, is what is known as Monument 13. Now, you can see a replica of this at the La Venta Park in Villahermosa, Mexico. And in fact, I'm taking a group of you guys there in January. I'll leave a link somewhere up here for you to click on. It's one of the first artifacts or monuments that we see. And what it shows is a very clearly bearded man wearing some kind of wrap or turban around his head with some kind of waistcloth that's hanging down behind him with large boots, and he's carrying a flag. And what's very strange about this is that we see so many things on this monument that are not commonly seen in the Native American world, let alone the Olmec world. The first of which being facial hair. Nowhere in the Olmec world do we see any depictions at all of facial hair. And in fact, we actually see the Olmecs quite commonly, and I can't really think of any example of an Olmec ever depicting themselves with hair. They seem to be a completely hairless civilization, kind of like the Egyptians, to be honest with you. And nowhere else in the Native American world do we really see people growing large, thick beards. Now you have to remember, Native Americans are Asiatic people, and Asians, you don't really see them growing huge, large, thick beards in the way that you may see Anglo-Saxons or Arabs or whoever else that grow these long, thick beards. So that's peculiarity number one. The second is this turban sort of wrap on the top of his head. This is something that is not seen anywhere else in the Native American world as well, as far as I know. It seems that we have a couple of things here that indicate a person who seems to have come from somewhere far, far away. And then these tall boots that he's wearing. This is something that, as far as I can recall, in all the Native American sites that I've been to throughout the US, throughout Mexico, and throughout South America, I have not seen any examples of tall boots on anybody. And finally, the flag. Recently, I actually have seen some examples. I used to think for years that there were no examples of ancient Native American flags. That doesn't seem to be correct. About 2,000 years after the time of the Olmecs, at the height of Veracruz culture and the height of we call it the Maya ball game, but really it's the Mesoamerican ball game. It's not just the Maya participating. You have El Tajín, which is Veracruz culture, not Maya, not Teotihuacan. And then you have the Aztecs participating, and you have the Teotihuacanos participating, and even the Toltecs. It seems that during this time, there's some limited evidence to suggest that ancient Native Americans did actually have flags or banners, possibly something to do with the games, perhaps very likely something to do with the games, actually. But again, this is 2,000 years after the time of the Olmecs. During the time of the Olmecs, and even immediately afterwards, for the next 1,000 years, we do not see evidence of flags in the Native American world, and especially not the particular kind of handheld flag that this character is wearing. Now, where do flags like this come from? Well, in the old world, the very earliest we see evidence of flags are on the Nakata culture pottery vessels that come out of pre-dynastic Egypt. Now, this is 3,200 to 3,600 BC, really far back in time. And essentially what we see on these vessels are these riverboats with flags on them. And the idea behind this is that possibly the flags indicate what village or settlement, town, or maybe even city, if we're this far back in time, if there are settlements big enough to be cities, that this individual on this boat came from. It's a way to symbolize who you are and where you're from and identify yourself. And from there, it seems to spread throughout the ancient Mediterranean world and the rest of the ancient Old World until the medieval period. All of those things together indicate to me that this seems like someone who traveled from far away to be there. However, there's one more key piece of evidence. This logogram, or this early Mesoamerican glyph that is carved just next to this figure, indicates a foot. And the Olmec archaeologists themselves from Mexico indicate that this means that he is a traveler. This is often called Monument 13, the Traveler. So even the Olmec archaeologists themselves say this is someone coming from someplace else, somewhere outside of the Olmec world. And then right there, the speculation is essentially the brakes are pumped and there's no more further speculation as to where exactly this man comes from.